Booking a ski vacation sounds easy, until you realize that there are about 400 websites all claiming to know the best resort. Spoiler alert, they don't agree. The reality is, no mountain's perfect. Some have fantastic grooming, some crush it on free parking, and some excel in their offerings of overpriced hot chocolate. So before you start clicking around on travel sites, you've got to figure out what you actually care about. Today we're breaking down all the different ways you can decide what makes a ski resort good, and which standards you should really be judging by. This video is going to have two distinct phases as we break down the different criteria and give some mountains that excel in each category. In the first section, we'll cover what are, in our opinions, the 6 most important things to consider. Then, we'll switch to discussing 3 things that most people don't consider, but can really make or break a ski vacation, so be sure to stick around for that part. Please also be aware that we are a predominantly Western mountain-focused channel, so there will be some slight lean towards that geographic region. Let's go ahead and jump in by discussing the snow. Okay, so if you're going skiing or snowboarding, you're going to want good snow. They are called snow sports for a reason, after all. Snow is the single biggest inhibitor to a good ski vacation nowadays. If there's not enough snow, then not a lot will be open. Not only is it repetitive to ski the same runs over and over, man-made cover isn't nearly as good to ski on, and less open terrain leads to more crowding in the limited open area. Of course, snowfall quantity is important, but so is quality. It's way more fun to ski light, dry powder than wet, heavy slog. Another aspect of snow is consistency, or how often it snows. Some regions have a tendency to get more frequent but smaller storms, while some get bigger, less frequent storms. We would argue that the more frequent case is better for trips booked in advance, so you don't end up on the end of a multi-week dry spell leaving the ungroomed areas almost unskiable. And the final consideration under snow is resiliency, or how well the snow surface holds up after it's already on the ground. Some resorts have more of a reputation for getting quite warm and sunny, which leads to freeze-thaw cycles and a phenomenon called sunbaking, which can make snow incredibly hard and unpleasant to ski. Between snowfall quantity, snowfall quality, snowfall frequency, and snow resiliency, there's already a lot to unpack here. Of course, one can never be certain how the snow will be when booking a vacation in advance, but some regions are more predictable than others. For the best results across those 4 criteria, we would recommend the Utah Cottonwoods, such as Alta and Solitude, and the Canadian Rockies, such as Lake Louise and Kicking Horse. If you're confined to the East Coast, Killington is a solid pick. When booking a ski vacation, you want to ensure that you'll be on the snow, not waiting in lines. If you're familiar with the ski industry, you've most likely seen videos of enormous lines making the rounds on the internet. Ski resorts only have a certain number of terrain and lifts, and there is an ever-increasing demand to ski nowadays, so booking a resort that has decent crowd flow and doesn't suffer from hour-long lift lines is critical if you want to make the most of your vacation. Many people make the mistake of looking at numbers for this. Many assume that because a ski area has 40 lifts, it will have shorter lines than a ski area with 20 lifts. This, however, is not the case, and you'll often want to look at the trail maps to predict if the mountain will see significant lift lines. We can go much more in detail on this topic in another video if you guys would like, so let me know down below, but let's start with the basics. First of all, you'll want a mountain with multiple access points and multiple lifts from each access point. For example, Copper Mountain has 3 base areas, 2 of which have 2 options each to get out of the base area. Additionally, you'll want to see if there's a good spread of lifts across the mountain, or if everything seems to flow to one place with only one route out. Commonly referred to as choke points, you'll want to avoid places like Keystone because you can see how almost all of this frontside terrain flows to the Montezuma Express. A good example of spread is Jackson Hole, as each lift serves its own couple of trails, not an entire mountain's worth. Some of the best spots to avoid crowds while still getting the big mountain feel are Grand Targhee, Wyoming, Sun Valley, Idaho, and Whiteface, New York. The third thing on the list is terrain, and this is very complicated and case-specific, so we won't go too terribly into detail. The primary form of skiing at these true ski resorts are groomers. These are runs that resorts smooth out overnight and make super nice, maintaining the snow quality even when everything else may be poor. Typically just greens and blues, some resorts will groom steeper terrain as well. Some resorts do groomers better than others, but we would recommend Snowmass, Colorado, Deer Valley, Utah, and Stowe, Vermont. Of course, almost all major resorts have a significant amount of groomed terrain, So this category isn't as specific, and if you only intend to ski groomers, we would say to prioritize the other categories we're discussing. Within off-piste terrain, all of the ungroomed runs, you've got lots of different subcategories. Because there are so many, for each type I'm just going to give a brief description and our top pick that we've skied for that type of terrain. First, you've got bowls. These are wide open areas where you can play around in the snow without many obstacles. The obvious pick for this is Vail, Colorado. Another popular one is moguls, which are these big bumps you have to ski through that result from a trail being left entirely ungroomed, but still within confined boundaries, unlike bowls. Our pick for this is Winter Park, Colorado. Another type that's pretty exclusive to North America is trees, which is pretty self-explanatory, trusting your reactions to ski through a typically unmarked forest. A good bet for this is Steamboat, Colorado. Finally, you've got extremes, which itself can be broken down into lots of other things, including but not limited to cliffs and chutes, which require lots of skill and the utmost care. For accessible, truly demanding expert terrain, you can't go wrong with Palisades, Tahoe, California. Next up is size. After all, a mountain can have some fantastic terrain, but if it only has 2 trails of that type, it's not going to be worth your time to book an entire vacation there. While there are big mountains that don't necessarily have a good concentration of terrain types, for the most part, larger resorts offer a larger variety of all types of terrain than smaller resorts do. This criteria should be more important to beginner, intermediate, and advanced skiers, while for experts, oftentimes the best destinations are smaller mountains. Focusing on those lower 3 skill levels, bigger mountains not only offer more options, but typically also more variety within a skill level. While it's not a cut and dry rule for all big resorts, the larger and taller a destination is, the higher a chance that it'll have more than just your standard groomers and moguls. Some of the biggest mountains are where you'll most likely find intermediate and beginner bowl, tree, and adventure terrain. Another benefit of visiting a larger mountain is that even in peak times, larger mountains will pretty reliably have a terrain pod or mountain area which is quieter than the rest of the resort. Larger mountains also tend to have better facilities and lift infrastructure, although this is not universally true. The one major downside of choosing a large mountain is that they tend to draw larger crowds than smaller, more local hills. However, if you're looking for never-ending exploration, the Epic Passes Vail, Park City, and Whistler Blackcomb, and the Icon Passes Palisades Tahoe and Big Sky are our top picks. This next one comes with a bit of a caveat, as it can cause some crowds, but for the 5th thing to keep in mind, we'd recommend ease of access. Nobody likes half of your ski day being spent just getting to the mountain or having to do an hours-long drive in a rental car from the airport. Ease of travel can be different for everyone, depending on whether you're going to stay on-site or stay off-site and drive in each day. Some of the more commonly hailed resorts for easy access are the Summit County ski areas of Colorado, including Breckenridge, Keystone, and Copper Mountain. These are good because of their proximity to Denver International Airport, but we'd only recommend them in this category if you're staying on-site or close. Driving from Denver is far from the easiest access you can get. Salt Lake City's access to the Cottonwood Canyons is a very short drive, but it also gets pretty nasty traffic and congestion, so that's not the easiest region to access either. Utah's Park City and Deer Valley ski resorts aren't immune to traffic issues either, but aren't typically as bad as the Cottonwoods. Lake Tahoe gives you a lot of flexibility and options all close to each other and is accessible via the Reno airport, but also gets some pretty bad traffic. If you're willing to fly, however, Jackson Hole and Aspen have their own airports, making them some of the most accessible ski destinations. Another one many may not think of is Alyeska, which is a short drive from Anchorage, Alaska that doesn't typically get traffic. The final major category in the first phase that we'll cover is facilities, which is also a broad category. This can apply to base villages, on-mountain facilities, and everything in between. We're going to start by talking about on-site lodging. For those willing to pay a premium, some resorts offer lots of ski-in, ski-out, or walking distance lodging in their base areas. As a general rule, the bigger the resort, the more options it will have, but this doesn't always apply, so be sure to do lots of research. We like Snowmass for on-site options. Some ski areas have much larger and more developed base areas, while some are just a day lodge and a lift. If you're planning to spend a lot of time at a mountain, you may want to filter your options to those with larger base villages, as those will typically have better après options, restaurants, and shops, whereas a base area like that of Arapahoe Basin is pretty bare bones. On-mountain lodges are another thing to consider, as you may want to look more towards resorts with more frequent on-mountain lodges you can take a break in if tired or in the event of poor weather. Our favorites out there for on-mountain facilities and base area options are Snow Basin, Utah and Beaver Creek, Colorado, respectively. Facilities is another one of those ones that's subjective, and we're really just putting it on this list so that you don't forget. Consulting the ski resort's website and/or trail map is a quick and easy way to identify what type and quantity of facilities a mountain has to offer. Alright, while snow, crowds, terrain, size, access, and facilities are among the most important factors to consider, there are a few more things that many people may overlook that are just as critical. First, let's talk about mountain aesthetic. It may seem obvious that one of the main reasons people go skiing is to be in the mountains, but not all mountains are created equal. A resort can have all the great terrain, snow, and facilities one could want, but if its surroundings don't impress, guests are likely to leave underwhelmed. On the other hand, sometimes even small or otherwise unremarkable resorts may be a worthwhile destination for the views alone. One of our favorite aspects of ski travel is experiencing the unique characteristics of different mountain ranges and specific resorts. Skiing the high alpine terrain of the Canadian Rockies provides a completely different experience from riding down to the shore of Lake Tahoe, but both experiences are absolute musts. Some resorts may be riddled with cliffs and steep drops, some may be crowned by jagged peaks, some may contain gentle, wide-open bowls, and others may be characterized by built-up infrastructure like homes and lodges. What different guests are looking for on their next vacation will vary from person to person, but it's important to realize that different ski resorts will have vastly different aesthetics. Just being up in the mountains is a special experience, but if you're spending top dollars to travel somewhere to go skiing, you want to be sure that the location is going to wow you. At the end of the day, your surroundings can determine your day just as much as your own activity. Vermont's Mad River Glen offers an extremely unique aesthetic, as its old-school style feels like you've been transported to an entirely different world. Some of the best mountains for pure physical beauty, however, include Alaska's Alyeska, British Columbia's Lake Louise, and California's Heavenly. Another thing that most people don't put as much thought into as they perhaps should when planning a ski trip is lifts. A resort's lift network essentially determines what terrain is accessible and how easily that terrain can be lapped. It also, as discussed earlier, dictates crowd flow at base areas and on the slopes themselves. Most guests would rather not spend their day waiting in lift lines, nor would they like to have to take 3 separate lifts to lap their favorite terrain, so having efficiently placed lifts and enough uphill capacity to accommodate demand can make or break a ski day. Of course, some resorts can get by with old fixed grip lifts even in key mountain areas when crowds are low, but riding on these slow-moving lifts is a vastly different experience than riding on a fancy high-speed bubble chair, so you'll want to consider a resort's lift infrastructure. Many people avoid fixed grip lifts altogether because they can be intimidating to load and take so long to get anywhere. Covered lifts, including the aforementioned bubble chairs, alongside gondolas, trams, and other types, can come in clutch on storm days. That's all to say that it is important to look at what you'll be dealing with, not only when your skis are on the snow, but also for your ride up the hill. Some of the most modern, fast, reliable, and luxurious lift systems in North America can be found in Big Sky, Montana, and Deer Valley, Utah. Perhaps the most underrated factor that people should consider when planning a ski vacation is navigation. Ski resorts are, at the end of the day, built on fully natural mountains with unique topography, so rarely is it possible to set up a resort in a way that makes it always fully clear how to navigate the entire footprint to new visitors. Different aspects, flat areas, and presence of cliffs, glades, or skiable terrain can all combine to make a mountain easy to get lost in. Obviously, you don't want to spend half your vacation trying to decipher maps. Thus, certain resorts may be worth avoiding for these reasons. Navigation is perhaps the only category in which large mountains are at a disadvantage, as navigating between mountain areas at a massive resort is inherently more time-consuming and difficult than doing so at a smaller resort. There are, however, certain things even the largest resorts can do to improve the experience for guests, and conversely, even some small resorts are set up in ways that make it easy to get lost. This is somewhat tied into our previous category, as an effective lift network can help make a mountain more intuitive to navigate. Additionally, clear signage at the base areas, tops of lifts, and key trail intersections can help guests figure out where they want to go without too much headache. Off the slopes, a well-designed trail map can provide a key reference for visitors who get lost or confused about where to go. Breckenridge, Colorado does a really good job of making a complex mountain easy to navigate, as does, rather surprisingly, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Now look, planning a ski trip is no easy feat, and trying to find what mountain will be right for any one person, let alone a family or group of friends, may feel overwhelming at times. We hope that this video gave you a good starting place, and if you have any questions or need recommendations, we'd be happy to help as best we can in the comments. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider subscribing to help support this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.